Hello, welcome back to Hazel Jane Tarot for my February favourites. Thank you for your patience. I'm filming this on the 17th of March, so happy St. Patrick's Day. It's more than 2 weeks since February ended, but I have been finding it hard to get some quiet time to do some filming, so finally I got a chance to film my February favourites today. So obviously with February being the month in which we have St. Bridget's Day or Imbolc, one of my favourites was being able to feel that turn of the wheel of the year in towards springtime. It's still very cold and wintry through February, but at least the days start getting longer, noticeably so, and that's a real relief for me. So I really love that time of year. And now as we're leaning further into March, can really feel a little bit more warmth in the sun, and it is lovely. So on the 1st of February I did make Bridget's crosses, and I filmed a video about how to make 4 and 3-legged Bridget's crosses that I uploaded near around the 1st of February. So that should be on my channel if you want to check it out. And this is one of Wendy Andrews' images of Bridget, and I have the full 8 of these as little greeting cards that I display in my home just as the wheel of the year turns. So Bridget will be getting swapped out for the spring equinox or Ostara image quite soon. But this is, I have other images of Bridget elsewhere. But yes, so it's nice to put this out on the 1st of February to make some Bridget's crosses. So cards-wise, things have been quiet for me. I haven't been buying as many decks. I haven't been shopping for decks or window shopping for decks. I have to say I've also been watching fewer YouTube videos on other channels. Maybe just haven't had, I don't know, the same appetite for stuff around tarot and oracle cards over the last month or two. I do still quite really enjoy watching Lisa Papez's hot takes videos and seeing all the different things that are coming up and all the things I'm not going to buy. So my whole plan was to not buy too many new tarot and oracle decks in 2022 because I have bought quite a lot over the last 2 years. And I kind of stayed true to that resolution through the month of February, almost. So February was when I picked up the Total Tarot magazine, and I have already filmed a deep dive review of the first 3 issues of that magazine, so that is also a recent video on my channel. But I'll just show you here some of the decks that came with that. So I didn't go out and buy a deck, but I did get some cards with that Total Tarot magazine. So this is the Golden Art Nouveau Tarot by Lo Scarabeo, and as you can see I don't have the full deck because I just bought the first 3 issues of that magazine. So we just have these very bling-in Rider-Waite Smith kind of clone or redrawing cards, and they're quite lovely, but they don't excite me terribly, and I decided it wasn't worth buying another like 50 something issues to get one card and a magazine. So I had mentioned I was thinking of covering a binder with these cards, but I haven't done that yet. So these are sitting at the moment sort of just waiting for something to use them for. But I do quite like that box, the strength and it's so gold. It's lovely. But yeah, I'm not gonna end up with a full deck. So that was a bit of a deck that I got in February. And the other deck that I got in February was also through buying the Total Tarot magazine, and that's the Radiant Wise Spirit is what they're calling it, but it really is not quite the same as the Radiant Wise Spirit that you can buy at the moment. And I think it was called the Pamela Coleman Smith deck or something like that when it first came out from Lo Scarabeo, and it was christened The Dirty Pam by Kelly Bear, and is affectionately known as that by some in the tarot community online. And so this is a nice recoloration, even if the The line work is quite thick and muddy looking in some of the cards. Like look at the Chariot, look at his eyes. But the colour working in it is lovely. So that is just another Rider-Waite-Smith deck basically, but with nice colours. So that was my second new deck or my first complete new deck of February. And as I say, I didn't go out intentionally to buy the deck, although I'll be honest, I did buy the second and third issues of Total Tarot magazine in order to get this deck, because I've always been attracted to that coloration but didn't really like the big glossy borderless cards, and I much prefer this version. So happy to have got that. I think it only cost about £7 when I put together the cost of the 2 issues of the magazine. So those were the new decks that I got in February 2022. In terms of decks that I worked with, as I said, I wasn't using cards a huge amount. I do tend to do a nightly card pull, and I used the Angel Guide Oracle by Kyle Gray with illustrations by Jennifer Hawkyard for the month of February. Now, I did find I kind of missed the African Goddess Rising deck, which I had used through January. This deck, while nice, didn't resonate on the same level as that deck. And I don't know if it's going to be a deck that I keep long term, but there's a lot to like in this. It's an angel deck, which won't be everybody's cup of tea. But one of the things that I really like about it is that the art style is quite modern. I have another angel deck that has really like kind of medieval illustration style, and I'm not into it. This I much prefer. And it's also quite a diverse deck in terms of showing angels, not as all like white blonde people, but all sorts of different human figures being depicted as angels. So it's the artwork is lovely, and the keywords are useful. I mean, there's not as much light and shade, you know, in terms of positive and negative messages, or like more challenging messages, like forgiveness and understanding, learning experience, take a step back. I guess these can be reflecting of different kinds of life experience. But I find it was overall kind of, you know, blessings and abundance sort of a deck. So yeah, it's nice. But when I got to the end of the month, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, I'm finished with this for now. And I didn't feel like that at the end of January when I decided to stop working with the African Goddess Rising deck. In fact, I was sorry to be putting it away. There is a little guidebook, of course, that goes with this. And it's written by Kyle Gray. So you have like a message and an extended message, which isn't a format that I really get as a way of approaching a guidebook. But I read it sometimes. I didn't necessarily read it every single night for the card pull. But the other thing that's nice about a deck like this is it was something that my daughter, who's only 3.5, was quite attracted to, and liked looking at the beautiful angels in the pictures, you know. So that was quite nice. And there's nothing kind of scary or confronting really. So she was allowed to pick the card quite often. You know, she liked to handle them and pick them and then display the little picture. So I suppose it is the case with angel decks, isn't it? Like they're quite accessible and non-challenging in some ways. But so yeah, that's the Angel Guide Oracle by Kyle Gray. I actually got that in a trade last year, so it was nice to get using it. And I probably will use it again, but it didn't leap to the top of my favourites list or anything like that. And the other deck that I worked with was the Spirit Keepers Tarot Revelation Edition. Started off this year with great intentions of study, and that really has fallen by the wayside. But I have been using it to read with, and oh, it's so beautiful. It's interesting for a deck that has such detail and such an amount of depth in the imagery. I find this a very quick a almost abrupt reader. Like when I pull 3 cards from this deck, it just, boom, that's the message. It comes across really quickly. Listen to that noise. It's so ASMR. I love this deck. But yeah, I think it almost would make me think of something like a really good car, right? So if the people who are making the car understand how to, like, all the component parts and all the workings that are needed to go under the bonnet to make that car an incredibly fast or efficient drive, you as the driver don't need to know how all those parts work, but when you put your foot down, it'll go fast. Do you know what I mean? So I think Benebell Wynn herself used that metaphor in a slightly different way. Studying this deck, yeah, it helps you understand what all the ingredients are that she's used to build up the message, but it doesn't necessarily change how you read the deck, I don't think. The deck just reads really quick, really easily and clearly because of the amount of thought and detail that has gone into it. That's my thinking anyway. So it's a little bit like a Ferrari. Or, I don't know, I have no particular interest in Ferraris. Other makes of expensive car are available. Anyway, so that's the Spirit Keepers Tarot, which is the only tarot deck really that I read much with at all in February. So moving on to other things. So this is where hopefully I'll be able to edit in some pictures for you. I went to the cinema to see Spider-Man No Way Home, and I really enjoyed it. It was such good fun. It really was nostalgic. I don't want to spoil the plot too much, but if you haven't seen it or you're interested in seeing it, but the film brings in, rather than characters from the Marvel universe as it exists at the moment, it brings in actors and characters from previous versions of Spider-Man. So the villains and the heroes from previous versions of Spider-Man. And it was just really entertaining. Really entertaining night out at the cinema. So I enjoyed that a lot. And again, I wasn't watching loads of TV, but I did watch all of the season 1, I think there only is one season, of the TV remake of High Fidelity, which stars Zoe Kravitz in the lead role as Rob. And I really enjoyed it, and I was surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did because I loved the TV show the film High Fidelity. I really loved John Cusack in that role. I'd read the book as well, and more than once, and I've watched the film quite a few times, so I knew the original film really, really well, which can sometimes put you off a remake, but I really enjoyed it. I thought the way they adapted the story worked really, really well, and the new cast were great, and yeah, it was obviously the plot was altered to fit with a series format, keeping it open to move into a second season, and then I think it got cancelled and there was no second season, so I think I was sorry that it didn't resolve more towards the end of the final episode, but I really enjoyed watching that in February. And then reading, well, my top read of February was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Really enjoyed this, and it's hard to say too much about it without totally ruining the plot for you if you haven't read it yet. But basically, the plot hangs on a young journalist interviewing an elderly film star about her life, and it's sort of hung around the 7 plot points of her 7 husbands. And so I'm expecting, like a glamorous Hollywood romance story about her and all of these husbands. And that's not quite what this is. Although it does do that, but it doesn't quite unfold in the way that I expected. And beyond that, I would be spoiling it, I think. But I read this in like 3 days. I found it very much a page turner, and I think I'd try to read more by Taylor Jenkins Reid because this was really well written. I enjoyed the way she worked with the framing device and the main story and newspaper articles and different things that she used within it. Yeah, it was very clever, well written. Highly recommend that if you like, if you want a bit of page turny fiction. couldn't go too far wrong with this. I also quite enjoyed reading in February World War Z by Max Brooks. So I'm a bit of a fan of dystopian fiction and that sort of genre. And I'm obviously not averse to a zombie story, but I've been more familiar with zombie narratives in film or TV, and this was really interesting. The film World War Z is nothing like this book. So it takes a format of, like, if you can look at sort of the way the page is set out, interviews. So the premise is that there has been a zombie war and it is essentially over. And a reporter, kind of, I think he's a sort of civil servant, has been going around interviewing people about the zombie war. And the story, the novel is made up of multiple narratives. There's no protagonist. There's no kind of real plot development, except for the first story in the book is about the origins of the zombie virus. So it's kind of that zombie as virus infection kind of idea. It starts with like the very beginnings of it, and then sort of goes through all the various stages of this zombie war. But because of that, in a way, this kind of, it doesn't have a heart as a story, because there is no protagonist. And the writer has also chosen to make all the zombies are always like a kind of faceless horde, as opposed to, you know, like your neighbor who's just been turned into a zombie who you then have to kill, which I think would have been a more interesting angle on it. But that's not sort of this. That's not the version of this story that he's telling. But it was entertaining. I started off thinking it was really great, and then by the end I think I decided it was more like a 3-star read, but I did enjoy it and read it quite quickly. And the other book that I read, but I don't have to show you here at the moment, is I Am Legend by oh, I can't remember, it'll be on the screen. I Am Legend, which was written in the 1950s, and I had read it before, maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago even, and I reread it, and I really enjoyed it. I remembered enjoying it the first time, but I didn't remember much about the story, except for the fact that the film I Am Legend is nothing like the book, which is, you may be sensing a theme here, but yeah, it's post-apocalyptic again, also sort of virus based apocalypse, but it's a vampire infection in I Am Legend, and I find the story quite brutal and confronting in places, but also the way it unfolds and the detail in the story, and sort of one man's struggle against the vampire hordes, but then, you know, the story takes a turn, and ends up somewhere different from where you think it's going. So if you've never read it, it's a bit of a classic, and it's quite a short one. So as long as you're open to a little bit of vampire horror, it's you know, dystopian fiction. I enjoy the genre. So that was something those were the 3 sort of top fiction reads of February. I also was reading Brigid by Courtney Weber, but I haven't finished it yet, so I'm not including it properly here today. And then just a couple of little final things. I managed to get to some live events in February, and obviously that's not something you can go to or check out, because you know, they're over and they were here. But I did go to see a musical on stage. I went to see Spring Awakening, and that is a show that I had seen once before, and it was a very intimate, small cast, small kind of black box playing space in Thrust, and you know, you were sitting on the edge of the playing space and really close to the performers. So it was a very intimate performance of what is quite an intimate musical, and quite a challenging and dark musical. And yeah, it was great to be experiencing live performance like that. It was really, really good. And the other live performance that I got to see in February was Poet Laureate of the UK, Simon Armitage, gave a reading of his poetry, and I was at that. And I wish I was able to share with you one of his poems now at the end of this video, but unfortunately I'm using my phone to I have no way of having the text here to read to you, but he had a very powerful poem about the pandemic, which was which he read, and I'd really like to share that with you. So I will put a link to that poem below if I can find it online under this video so that you can read it yourself. But Simon Armitage is very funny but very thoughtful poet, and I really enjoy his work. So it was really nice to hear him read, and he did a Q&A and so on afterwards. So that was lovely. So that was the month of February. So thank you for if you've watched this, thank you for waiting all the way into the second half of March for my February favourites. I'll try not to be so tardy with my March favourites. We'll see how we go. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.